Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Sin and Tonic. Today's story is about the man who wouldn't die. Let's go. Sin and Tonic! Hi guys, how are we? Hope you're all okay. I am having a beverage of coffee because I didn't get enough sleep last night. I'm snoring because I'm sort of, where the weather's changed, I'm like a bit bunged up and sniffly, and that just makes me snore. The minute I'm like that, I snore. And I woke myself up snoring last night about 4 or 5 times and then just lay there. So I'm tired. Coffee to the face. Check me out just casually sitting here with my phone in hand. Apologise. I'm coming at you today with another oldie. I'm doing an oldie case. I quite enjoyed doing the old cases before I have my break. And this one is, don't have a freaking tissue. It's interesting, isn't it, to cover some of those cases that are in history. I suppose everything's in history once it's happened, but you know what I mean. So we're heading to 1932. Some of the names in this case, we've got Morano. That just makes me think of like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Like gangsters. It's in America, but it's got this vibe when I was researching it and the things that were written about the case. It's almost like, you know, like, oh, back in the day. Like sort of, it sounds all theatrical when you read things that were written in the paper. It was like reading a theatre production almost. Like I was reading a play from the 1930s and not a true crime story. Ew. And helpfully, on a day where I'm really tired, there's a few names that I can't even pronounce, so we'll try. This is a dastardly story. So, 1932, and a plot. The plot was the thickening. So a plot was being made between a group of men, and this was taking place in a speakeasy. Now, a speakeasy was small sort of pubs and things that, like hidden away, but they were an illegal establishment for getting an alcoholic beverage. Let me just read out about a speakeasy because it's fascinating. So speakeasy bars, they date back to at least the 1880s. They came into prominence in the United States in the Prohibition era, 1920 to 1933. During this time, the sale and distribution and transport of alcohol was prohibited. So people are sneaky, aren't they? Should have been a sneakeasy. But anyway, so they had these establishments and they would be like, the front would look like a shop, but you'd go in and there'd be like a sneaky little bar and you could get your alcohol. So totally illegal. And now in the UK and probably in the US, they have bars and establishments that are look like or call back to the speakeasy when it was illegal. And of course it's not illegal to have alcohol now. Well, in some places it is, but in the US and in the United Kingdom, they're more sort of like, they're trendy here. It's like a speakeasy. And we went to this fabulous little speakeasy in London. Oh, isn't it fabulous? It cost about £35 for a pint of beer. Anyhow, so our story begins in a speakeasy. Tony Marino is the owner of said speakeasy. I can't say this name, apologies. I think it's Pasqua. I will spell it. Pasqua. He was there as well, 24 at the time. He was an undertaker by trade. Ooh. And then we have Daniel Kreisberg. Apologies again if I'm getting that name incorrect. He was also at the speakeasy. So we have an unlikely kind of crew, right? We have an undertaker, a speakeasy owner, and a grocer, like a greengrocer. And they're all sitting around talking about how they can get some money. Money is really, really tight. Things are not great. It's like a Great Depression. I think it was the Great Depression. So they're like, oh, you know, this is awful. This is terrible. We don't have any money. The speakeasy might end up being closed because he just can't afford to keep it open. This is Marino. And they're having this chit chat. And it's almost like they're having this chit chat. They're drinking away and they're looking around and then they spot Michael Malloy. It's fascinating really to me because, you know, I often think, how do these things and these plots and that come into play? How do they begin? 3 men sitting at a bar, chit, chat, you know, chit. right. And, well, they're talking about how shit everything is and how money is super tight. And then they just... How do we get from that to what happens next? Turns out that Francis Pasqua, I don't think I can say that name properly, so I'm going to call him Francis, the undertaker. Turns out that just the year before this, he had... Well, I mean, there's no other way of putting it. He'd murdered somebody for money. So they get to talking. I guess this is how it comes about. Like, oh, guess what I did last year? He must have trusted them quite a lot. But anyhow, he had befriended a homeless woman called Mabel Carson. Poor Mabel. He had befriended her. She was a heavy drinker. Over time, he convinced Mabel to take out a life insurance policy on herself and name him as the beneficiary. Now, if someone asks, wow, yeah, maybe she was drunk, I'm not sure, but she agreed to it, so she did. However she was manipulated into that, she did it. So he took out a £2,000 life insurance policy, he did, on Mabel. And then shortly after that, when she was heavily intoxicated and passed out, basically, so she had drunk until she was a goner, he stripped her body, he stripped her naked, not her body, she was alive at the time, but he stripped her naked. He placed her onto a bed and put that bed underneath an open window, and it was freezing cold. He then doused her body and the bed with water, so she would have she froze to death. I mean, it's just, that's horrific for the life insurance policy. So really, Francis was just like, oh, I've got a good idea. Did this last year, what do you reckon? Michael Malloy, who they have all been sitting at the bar near that day, well, frequently actually. Michael was a frequent visitor of the speakeasy. He was an alcoholic. He drank a lot and he never paid his bills, and that was quite a frequent thing that would happen in the speakeasies because the owners can't actually report anything to the police because it's illegal. The whole thing is illegal, so people would go in and drink, get really drunk, and then just walk out. You know, what are you going to do? So hence probably why the business was all going to close as well, because he was just losing money. So they all look towards Michael. He would be an easy target for this crime. Now, the thinking was, because Michael was such a heavy drinker, and so, like, they all agreed that if he was to have an unlimited tab at the bar, although he wasn't paying anyway, but whatever, even they all thought if he had an unlimited amount, if they just said, you've got an open tab, just whatever, drink what you want, you're not paying anyway, just it's on the house, they all thought that it would not be long at all before he would pass away, before he would just drink himself to death. So this was their plan, which I suppose you can argue, is that murder or is that just watching someone's demise and not stopping it? Not sure, but that was their thought process at the time, was like just a small nudge of like, not, you know, you're off the hook, you haven't got to pay for your drinks, because that might be holding him back a little bit. So they really thought that he would just drink himself to death. Also, isn't this just always the case? You know, when someone just gets away with something and they get a bit brazen? Francis did not get caught, obviously, for the murder of Mabel, and it wasn't even thought that it was murder. It was put down, a medical examiner said it was pneumonia, and that was that. So he got away with murder. He did get away with murder, and he got that money for it as well. So you can see how he was like, that was kind of easy money. And what he did do with Mabel there was easy. It was easy money. But with Michael, they knew that they wouldn't be able to convince him to sign, you know, life insurance papers and things like that. The plan took 5 months in total, the insurance plan. So Francis said, I'll do all the legwork, and he paid an unnamed accomplice to go with him to insurance meetings and say that he was called Nicholas Malloy. Okay, so this is now Nicholas Malloy, and it was all, he had an acquaintance in the undertaking business that would claim that he knew Nicholas Malloy and that he was a florist, so it's all going a bit deep now. Nicholas Malloy would take out 3 life insurance policies, and they totalled up to, I think it's the equivalent of, well, they would have when the money was split, they would have got £54,000 in today's money. And obviously times were very tight. Who's going to sniff at £54,000? Why do I think that's not a lot? I think because sometimes people get insurance policies now for like multiple millions. But obviously it's still a lot of money, isn't it? 54 grand. So it's taken 5 months, Sophie. It's taken 5 months to get all these insurance policies in place. And then Joseph Murphy, he's a bartender at the Speakeasy. He is then employed by Francis he's going to identify the body, Michael's body, when he drinks himself to death, as Nicholas, and be the beneficiary. So that's his part in it. And then the money's going to get split all which ways. So some people are getting paid less, like 150 quid here and there for their part in what they're doing. But the main players, the 3 men, they are going to get the equivalent of 54k in today's money. The press would call these men the murder trust. And it kind of really is, isn't it? They're just sitting around like, it's not even... There's been many cases where I've covered where people plot the murder of someone. But this is really sort of transactional and business-like. It is like a trust. It's like that. And they're employing people here, there and everywhere to do bits and bobs. It's very cold, isn't it? And callous. But it almost feels really detached from what they're actually doing. Even when I was researching it, I was like, they're doing that. But it's like, they are just like planning to kill somebody. Well, at the moment, they're just planning to watch somebody die and not stop it. But the plan would change. After 3 days of Michael having an open tab, he was still going strong. On the very first day, he had shot after shot after shot. He didn't hold back. He was like, okay, you're going to give me alcohol? Yeah, okay, let me off. Fine, brilliant. Keep it coming. It was said that it made Tony's arm hurt, where he was like keep pouring him shots of alcohol. And after like a whole drinking sesh and just copious amounts of alcohol, and people were just like people noticed, and people were thinking, what? He is going to die. He left the bar and he came back 24 hours later. Rinse and repeat. This happened 3 days in a row. He literally would drink himself, just drink more than people could even imagine, and then go home, obviously sleep it off, and then come back. So he was just insatiable, and people were just gobsmacked at how much he could drink. At this point in time, the murder trust had grown. So there were more members. Surely that's a stupid move, because you're just eating into... They already have the insurance policy set up. They were set to have 54k each, and now they've got even more people on board. Maybe they just... I don't know. So they're splitting the money even more ways, which seems a bit ludicrous. Anyway, some of the names, it's amazing. All of these guys were like petty criminals that would come into the Speakeasy. So we have Tough Tony, Joseph Malloy, who was his sidekick, Edward Tin Ear Smith, good old Tin Ear, he had a fake ear, and John McNally. So all these criminals, they obviously heard about, things happen, they hear the whisperings and they want in. So Tough Tony, he gets impatient and he's cross, because it would just it's quite clear that Michael is not going to drink himself to death. He is like a tank. He must have an iron stomach. And what happens next just proves that is absolutely crazy. So, the plan then changes. Alcohol is not going to do the job, but what about poison? Here we go. So they all think about poisoning him. So he's drinking a lot anyway. He's not going to notice if one of those shots is laced with something or, just poison in itself. He's just knocking them back. And they then think about using wood alcohol. This stuff sounds horrific. So a drink with 4% wood alcohol was enough to make somebody go blind. They came up with this plan not just to what's the word I'm looking for? I'm thinking infect. That's not right. What's that word? Lace. They weren't just going to lace one of his shots with wood alcohol. Oh no. They were going to give him a full shot of wood alcohol, and they freaking did. And he did not go blind. He did not die. He just carried on drinking. So there is something going on with his internals, because how are you standing? And again, this went on and on and on. It went on for nights. So they would give him whiskey to start with, but get him drunk and get him, loosen up. I mean, I'm surprised he even gets drunk, because it just feels like things go in and don't have any effect on his body. So he's getting drunk, and then they start giving him actual shots of wood alcohol, right? Nothing. He goes home. They think for sure he's going to die in the night. No, comes back the next day. So I think he was nicknamed Iron Man. Is that right? That seems crazy. Maybe I've made that up. I'll let you know. But anyway, so they literally kept on giving him these shots, and it went on for nights, and they kept thinking he'll die. He's going to die. He didn't die. He kept not dying. And then one night, drinking away, having his shots, and then he just crumples to the floor, and they think, here we go. Here we go, insurance policy. Michael laying on the floor, pulse is weak, everything's looking like, he's going to die. And then he takes a raspy sort of breath, and they think this is his last breath. And it's not. He starts snoring, and he's just simply passed out and fallen asleep. A few hours later, he wakes up and he asks for another drink. So even this, the closest they've got is him passing out drunk. I don't think I mentioned, but our boy Michael, he's in America from Ireland. So, they do say that the Irish can handle their alcohol, but this is just something else. The long and short of it is that Michael is just taking too long to die, because they're paying for these insurance policies. They also have given him an open tab. He's drinking a lot, and they've bought wood alcohol and things like that. So it's taking too long, and they keep trying. They keep trying to kill the man by giving him things to ingest. And it's like, when are you going to realise that that's not going to work? The next step is that he's quite partial to seafood, and he loves a sardine sandwich. So they get oysters and they get sardines, and they make up a little sort of seafood delight. They soaked the oysters in alcohol, pure alcohol. They left them for a few days so they weren't quite right. And then they fed them to him while he was having... He just enjoyed it. He thought it was brilliant. But I think the mixture of the oysters, the fact they weren't right, and also the alcohol and the consumption is meant to basically really mess with your insides. No, not a problem. Not a problem for Michael. And then they moved on to sardines, and they let a tin of sardines go off. What? But then they feed him that sandwich. Thank you, please, have that. He's just sitting there just consuming. He's like a rubbish bin, isn't he? It's just not having any effect. And then finally they move. I don't know why I'm like finally, because it's awful what they're doing. They're sort of torturing this man, even though, can you call it that? Because he's enjoying everything. He's like, oh, alcohol, yum, wood thing. It doesn't seem to be having any effect whatsoever. But I mean more, I don't mean it in a callous way, like, oh, finally, they're going to kill him. I mean, finally, they move on from this, because isn't that the definition of madness, is to just do the same thing without over and over again and expect something different? Well, yeah, that's what they were doing, and it was driving me mad. So they move on to a new plan. They are not the sharpest tools in the shed, right? Because let's not forget that Francis, the Undertaker, he's already had success with this, and it's taken him a while, but he was like, right, well, when I did this before, and then he divulges what he did to Mabel. And that, right, okay. So they wait for Michael to get incredibly drunk, daily occurrence, and then they take him to a nearby park, Crotona Park. They strip his clothes off, they douse him in water, and they leave him in the snow. Again, there are two versions of this part of the story. One thing that I read said that the following day he was found in a basement, like basically half naked, and he'd managed to crawl his way back. Bearing in mind, the whole time they took him to the park and stripped him off, put water on him and left him there, he didn't even wake up. He was gone, like really like out of it. And so he really did seem bionic at this point. But then another part of the story, because that would suggest that he'd crawled out of the park and made it somewhere. But another part of the story was that some policemen, and this was just bad luck, not for Michael, good luck for Michael, but for the perpetrators. The police came along literally minutes after they had left him in the park to die, and they got him up and took him to a homeless thing and got him some clothes and sorted him out. So they rescued him. With another unsuccessful murder attempt on their hands, John McNally, he said, I'm done with this. I want to run him over with my car, or with a car. They ummed and ahed, not sure. So this is when they then employ yet another member to the murder trust, Harry Green. He was set to receive 150 quid for his part in the murder. He was a cab driver and he agreed to run somebody over for $150. A group of the murder trust decided that they were going to go along for the ride. Lovely. This included Tony Marino, Francis, Murphy and the greengrocer, Kreisberg, I think. Tough Tony and Murphy, they get Michael. He's inebriated, drunk as a skunk. They bring him to this sort of secluded road and they hold him sort of crucifixion style, so they're with both his arms out, they're either side of him because he's absolutely gone, and they hold him like that so that the taxi Green is driving can run him over and kill him. So they're going to let go at the last minute, and then he's going to get hit by a car. Twice he dodges out of the way. So even though he's got these people that are holding him in place, at the last second he dodges the car until the third attempt, when he is successfully hit at 50 miles an hour. 50 miles an hour. The taxi hurtles into him. It knocks him over. He's then on the floor, and for good measure they just go back and they run him over again. So he's been run over 50 miles an hour. They reverse over him. They don't check his body because they're pretty sure that he's dead, right? And somebody is coming, so they have to just bugger off. So off they go. Do we think, raise your hands, that he's dead? Absolutely not. Absolutely bloody not. And I find this unbelievable. Murphy is the bartender who they have paid to be, Michael's brother. He's not his real brother, but he's going to identify him as this Nicholas person so they can get the insurance money. So he then has to ring around all of the hospitals to determine, because there's no word, obviously, they're not no one knows who this person is. So he's ringing around trying to find a person that's been hit, a man that's been hit by a car, and dead, basically. But he doesn't have any luck. There's no one in any local hospital of that description that's come in that's deceased from being hit by a car. And then they start to just think, well, God, we don't know what's happened here. We don't know. He had no ID or anything on him, Michael, so it might just have all been a bit it's all gone wrong. So they then are in the process, the murder trust, of trying to find an anonymous drunk person that they can pass off, that they can kill and pass off as Nicholas so that they can get this insurance money. They've given up on Michael. And again, it feels, this whole sort of murder trust thing, it does feel really disconnected because it's not personal to Michael. They just want to they don't care who it is as long as they get their money. But 5 days later, Michael walks back in to the speakeasy and he stumbles into the bar. More alcohol, please. And he's battered and bruised, but he's very much alive. My apologies. He had been in a hospital, Fordham Hospital. He'd been in a hospital, and he'd been out of it, and he just remembers waking up. And the minute he woke up, where did he want to go? He just left. He left the hospital, and was back at the speakeasy. So he was in hospital in that time. Otherwise, he would have been back at the bar. On the 21st of February in 1933, 7 months after the original twitterings of the plot to kill Michael, Michael would die. He was murdered. A tube was put from a gas light into his mouth, and then a towel was wrapped tightly around his head. Dr. Frank Manzella, another person that's brought in on the payroll of the murder trust, he wrote a fake death certificate to say that Michael had died of natural causes, and then Michael was buried. On the death certificate it said that Michael had died from pneumonia, and the trust received the first cheque, which was from £800, because they had 3 life insurance policies. The first one was £800. They got that money. When they then went to the other 2 insurers, they said, fab, brilliant, okay, wonderful, but we need to see the body. And, well, the body's already been buried. Sorry, no payout unless we see the body. Should have read the small print. Now, there are so many people involved in this crime, and it almost feels like they're all sat there drinking away at the speakeasy, just like, oh yeah, do you want to hear about what's going on? Do you want to hear about this? It's the talk of the town. It's the talk of the town. It's no wonder, it's a wonder, I mean, that nobody has already sort of gone to the police, or, you know, because news travels fast. Well, at this point, they are being investigated. Not they don't know what they've stumbled across really, but there is an investigation, because they are going to investigate if they think there's a fraud going on. And it seems, all of it seems very suspicious. It just uncovers the entire truth, slowly but surely. Also, people do start to confess and talk. The doctor that did the fake certificate, he probably thought, if I don't come forward, this is going to be worse for me. So he confessed to writing a fake certificate. And Harry Green, the taxi driver, he also confessed. I mean, this guy, I mean, there's one thing writing a fake certificate, but there's another thing running somebody over with your car. Crumbs. Harry Green went to prison. The doctor was given a big fine, and yeah, for writing the certificate. And the 3 founders, I don't know what you would say, but the original 3 people that were then, it was their idea and they were just employing people here and there, but the 3 main founders, which was Tony Maloney, that's not his name, what is it? Tony Marino. So the grocer, Marino, and Francis, they all were sentenced to death, and they were put to death in the electric chair. Michael's body had been exhumed so that they could do a proper, autopsy and find out how he had died, and it was all, they were found out. It was just, absolutely, I guess if they didn't have the policies where, if they'd have just gone for that initial policy, they would have got away with this, but the other 2 policies had to see a body, and then it all became a bit suspicious. But yeah, they didn't get away with murder. And there is a picture of Michael in autopsy. I'm not going to share it because I think it would be taken down anyway, but you can find it on the internet, and I don't know, it's eerie to look at, but also it's so sad, because he was obviously a troubled soul and didn't have a very good life, and was an alcoholic, and was just propping up a speakeasy, and they just chose him to, take out. He wasn't nicknamed Iron Man, he was nicknamed Iron Mike, or Mike the Durable. And his story has been retold in TV. I think there's even been a jazz song written about it and things like that, because it is just such a unbelievable story. And yeah, it's like a fable or a legend, isn't it, rather than true crime. But it was true crime, and it did happen. It's just beyond my brain to imagine how his body was able to put up with that much alcohol for a start, but also all of the other things that they gave him to try and kill him. Oof. Not to mention being hit by a car at 50 miles an hour and then just waking up 5 days later and going back to the bar. Mike the Durable. Iron Mike. That is all I have for you on today's case. The car is back. All is well. My stress levels have returned to a normal level. I'm just super, super tired. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Sin and Tonic. Have a join me next week. Not a true crime story, a vase or a jar or a mug of gin, coffee. Loving the case suggestions. Please keep them coming. I have a huge list. I really do. I've been adding to it as well with things that have come up and little things that I've seen here and there where I'm just like, ooh. But yeah, thank you. And thank you for everybody that has been like, hi, where have you been? Where have you been? Sorry if I worried people. Sorry if it wasn't clear and people didn't know. But yeah, I did take a break and now I'm back. Is there anything else to report to you? I graduate next week. Not next week. Wait. Yeah, next week. On a Friday. So when my video, that next week's video comes out, I will be graduating. Yeah. Well, it'll be the evening after. I'm really nervous. I finished my degree not last year but the year before, but I missed my graduation because I got sciatica. I have never had this in my life. You know, it's like it's in your back and it traps your nerve. I'm not lying to you when I say, I mean, I could bet I couldn't sit, I couldn't do anything much. I could lie down, but the doctor said, do not lay in bed, it's really bad for you. So the only thing I could really do was like pace up and down my house a bit, like in a really controlled and slow way. It was so painful. The work, honestly, up there with having a baby. And it was just, you can't get away from the pain. And I thought, I couldn't walk properly. I was walking like an absolute, like it just looked strained, painful. I was like having to pigeon. It was horrific. And I thought, I'm just like, that's embarrassing. That's not how I want to graduate. So I had to ring them the day of, because this happened 2 days before. And then that was that. And just say, I can't come. And then they said, do you know what? You can come next year to next year's ceremony. So I get to go next week. But I am really nervous because it's that whole, you know, walking across the stage thing. But I'm also really excited and proud. So yeah, so that's next Friday. Woohoo! Going to love you and leave you. Have a beautiful weekend. And I will see you all next week on graduation day. Oh, maybe I should try and pick a graduation themed case. Oh, a bit tragic, isn't it? Anyway, I'll see what I can find. See what I can do. Have a good one. Be good.